prefer to see a few faces in the audience, or do you want them black?
Whatever is convenient for folks, and yeah, whatever is convenient and good.
Hi, Dr. Mitra, is it okay if you stop sharing your screen for a few minutes, just so I can see the introductory comments?
Sounds good.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, I think most people are kind of trickled in now, so I guess we'll begin. Bonjour, Anin, and welcome to the 2020 GLIER-TRUST virtual seminar series. My name is Matthew Anderson, and I am a member of Dr. Erin Fisk's lab at the University of Windsor, and I'll be one of your hosts today.
And hi, my name is GLIER-TRUST, and I'm a doctoral student in the Learning Design and Technology from Wayne State University. I'm a host also from the seminar.
To begin, we'd like to acknowledge that the University of Windsor and Wayne State University sits on the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, Anishinaabe Nation, Peoria, Yamia, and Mississauga Nations.
We as the Windsor and Wayne University communities would like to move beyond acknowledgements, and we would like to not only give our respect to the traditional territory we are on, but also commit to learning and growing, starting with our partnerships and collaborations moving forward. We are striving to move forward in a new light guided by mutual respect, courtesy, and reconciliations. So during this seminar, please everyone should already be on mute and have their video off. Please confirm that, and if not, please mute and turn video off now. Please use the chat function and please write your questions down in the forms of the questions. Chat facilitators will be gathering questions from the thread and passing them on to our speaker and our host. This talk will be recorded and posted online at a later date, and we would like to ask our technical team to initiate the recording now if it's not already recording. The format of the seminar goes as follows. The speaker will deliver a shorter seminar presentation, 30 minutes, and early career researchers are encouraged to stay for the second half, which is focused on career mentorship, question and answer style discussions with the speaker.
Before we start the seminar, we would like to give the floor to a few individuals who have helped make the seminar series possible. I'd first like to introduce Dr. Chris Hauser, Faculty Science Dean, to make a few comments.
Good morning. As introduced, my name is Chris Hauser, and I am the Dean of Science here at the University of Windsor, and I'm also an environmental scientist. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Transformative Change and Environmental Sustainability Seminar Series, and I would like to thank Dr. Febria, Dr. Mundell, and Dr. Kashian for organizing this event, and I'd like to extend a special thank you to Dr. Mitra for starting off this important collaboration. Now more than ever, is there a need to build stronger collaborations within and between organizations, across borders, within our communities, and with our Indigenous partners. There are few other places on Earth that someone before us has not called home. We will only be able to achieve environmental sustainability if we listen and learn from our community partners, and I truly recognize and we truly recognize and value their lived experiences. Translational research is only effective if it is truly reciprocal, and it is in building authentic and lasting reciprocal relationships that the University of Windsor and Wayne State University are the most effective. And again, I thank the organizers for reinforcing this important perspective through the Environmental Sustainability Seminar Series, and I look forward to the talks. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Chris. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Donna Cashin, Director of Environmental Science and TRUST at Wayne State University.
Hello, and good morning to everyone. We at Wayne State are very excited to co-host the seminar series with the University of Windsor. I wanted to make note that this seminar series is led by the students, not the faculty. We are just here to greet you. And so thank you all to the students who have selected the speakers, who have organized the introduction, and everything that they have done has been wonderful. This is this seminar series is an opportunity at a time of unprecedented environmental insults that we're seeing to bring a diversity of not only voices, but disciplines to the table to discuss transformative change in environmental sustainability. So thank you to all.
Thank you for those comments, Donna. I would now like to introduce Dr. Mike McKay, Director of GLIER at the University of Windsor.
Thanks, Matt, and welcome everyone. On behalf of the Great Lakes Institute for Environmental Research, I'd like to welcome everyone to our virtual seminar series with GLIER-TRUST Wayne State, Transformational Change in Environmental Sustainability Research. This series is perhaps one of the silver linings of the pandemic, an opportunity to promote collaboration and engagement with our friends and colleagues at Wayne State, and hopefully to start collaborations that transcend this series. More than any other city in Canada, the city of Windsor identifies with our neighbors to the north. The cities of Detroit and Windsor share tight bonds, represent critical commercial links straddling the US-Canada border, with over 40,000 commuters, tourists, and truck drivers crossing the border each day pre-COVID. Indeed, despite the border formalities, the two cities form a contiguous metro area forming North America's largest cross-border conurbation. And numerous families in Windsor have American family members, so there's a kinship that's unique amongst Canadian cities. This special relationship between our cities lends itself to the binational cooperation needed to ensure stewardship of our shared Great Lakes resources. And this binational cooperation is paramount to meeting the challenges we face in our Great Lakes. I'd like to thank Catherine and Scott Mundell and Donna Cashian again for leading this series, and looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you for those comments, Mike. GLIER will now introduce our seminar speaker.
Thank you, Matt. And now I would like to introduce our invited speaker. Dr. Rahul Mitra is an associate professor in the Department of Communication and the director of the Resilience Institutions and Sustainable Environment Lab at Wayne State University. Today, he will give a seminar entitled Century Public Scholarship for Transformative Environmental Studies Research, Ongoing Lessons from the Detroit Water Stories Project. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mitra.
Okay, let me share my screen now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not now, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, you can do it now, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Are you guys able to watch this?
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the wonderful invitation, first of all, to talk with you folks. And secondly, for showing up at 10 a.m. on a Friday morning. I know it's also cold outside, so thank you so much for dropping by wherever you are. So I wanted to, okay, let me put this on slide view. There you go. So I wanted to share a few lessons with you, I guess, lessons that we're still learning very much from an oral history project that we started about 2 years ago in September 2018, merging collaborative ethnography, public scholarship, and documentary filmmaking. And we call this the Detroit Water Stories Project. We're so grateful to our funders, the Waterhouse Family Institute and Wayne State University, for making this possible. So our agenda for today pretty much is first to go over meanings and definitions of public scholarship and what it really means. And no surprise there, a lot of these definitions and meanings do in fact compete with each other. And then I'll provide you a brief overview of the Detroit Water Stories Project. I'll share with you a little bit about how our work has been shaped by our community partners, and especially from this concept of deputization from one of our key guides, Monica Lewis-Patrick from We the People of Detroit. And then I will share with you some 3 principles that have guided our work and our understanding of deputization in scholarship: listen, collaborate, and amplify, and how this actually pans out on the ground. And then finally, just some last thoughts, I guess, about what both public and scholarship might mean, or should mean for really transformative environmental studies projects. So getting started, this notion of public scholarship is really so messy in so many ways. It means things ranging from engaged research to service learning to public education for some folks. At the same time, it's also been easy to dismiss what public scholarship is in some respects as merely public relations and not enough scholarship. um, in other cases, it's also been very true that especially scholars of color have found it really hard to engage in the public scholarship that they recognize is so crucial because they lack the institutional support to actually engage in this hard work. So some broad questions around public scholarship that really swirl around include, what is the definition of scholarship, really? Does it include only research? Or can we find ways to include teaching and service, which are also technically part of our job requirements, and arguably should be more centered in the work that we do, even at our one research universities? The questions about whether public scholarship is less rigorous than traditional scholarship. And for me, when I try to think about how public scholarship is often posed as antithetical to traditional scholarship, I often come to this questioning, well, does that mean traditional scholarship is insular? And if so, is that something that we really should be aspiring to? Um, a really important concern is whether public scholarship is basically about egos and branding, right? And that goes to the public relations concern about public scholarship. And so trying to make sure that it does involve meaningful community engagement at so many levels. But that the ethics of perhaps expecting public scholarship and making it mandatory these are also debates that we need to be having on an ongoing basis. So what do we do know about public scholarship and what works? The University of Minnesota defines public scholarship as something that optimizes the extent to which university research informs and is informed by the public good. It maximizes the generation and the transfer of knowledge and technology. It educates the public about what research the university does, and it listens to the public and what research needs to be done. So at least by this definition, which is pretty expansive, we can see how it is at least aspires to go beyond narrow definitions of either research or public relations, and sees how it really informs the broader project and mission of the university, as well as the mission of what scholarship is and can be. Um, the AACU, in fact, sees public scholarship really centering around at least 5 themes: collaboration, of course, but not just in terms of interdisciplinary collaboration across by scholars, but also reciprocity and collaboration with community partners. The generativity and rigor parts might come as a surprise for some folks who often think of public scholarship resulting in work products that are not necessarily um, rigorous or scholarly. Um, in fact, generativity shows that public scholarship can result in a whole lot of different work products that can really cause public impact and important social and environmental impacts that were perhaps impossible with traditional means of scholarship, which of course I take to be scholarly journal articles and book chapters. And rigor is also important. Happy note, I actually just woke up this morning to the news that one of our competitively selected book chapters from this project, from an early stages of this project, was just selected to be to just win an award from the Environmental Communication Division of the National Communication Association. And this chapter was written in collaboration with my students, which again makes it all the more sweeter because it's not only being recognized as something that's rigorous, but it's generative, and it shows again the collaboration with students and community partners on the ground. So that's not a bad way to start the day after coffee, right? So essentially, all of these ways of defining and thinking about scholarship, and of course these experiences, at least for me, reiterates that public scholarship is really essential for fostering civic engagement and vibrant democracies. And the environment is crucial in this mix. You cannot really have transformative environmental justice or transformative environmental change if you ignore the societies that really are very much a key part of these environments. At the same time, this also means recognizing that public scholarship cannot thrive in a vacuum without strong institutional support. So this is something that I also try to advocate for, at least in my department, my college, to the extent that I can. So what is the Detroit Water Stories Project? The Detroit Water Stories Project really began back in September 2018. And this has been a long, slow, but really rewarding process on so many levels. Our initial goal has changed over time. Initially, our plan was just to do interviews and share some of these interviews with people who wanted to see them. And since then, that's really has become an expansive project to gather, share, and analyze Detroiters' oral histories of water insecurity and resilience. And we do this in a variety of multimedia formats: text, digital, video, photography, and so on. And our goal is very much tied to advocacy. The eventual goal of the project, even the goal of the scholarship, the traditional scholarship that we produce, is very much tied to advocacy. How can we support grassroots leaders and help build momentum for system level change? And I think it's, again, fitting that we got the award for a paper that really came from this class, actually. The project itself really began from a collaborative project that my graduate seminar in ethnographic research methods and communication we're starting. So in honor of that, I really wanted to highlight some of the important faces of the people of Detroit here on this slide, rather than pictures of skyscrapers in downtown. As impressive as our skyscrapers downtown are, I wanted to highlight some pictures of folks who have unfortunately passed away, people who are still living, but are still living through great discomfort to themselves, but also amazing people who have been on the front lines, helping deliver water and really showcasing the resilience of the community in unforeseen and unheard of ways, even during the COVID crisis. So the project really hinges on this core concept of water security and insecurity. Water security is defined by the United Nations as the capacity of a population to safeguard sustainable access to adequate quantities of acceptable quality water for sustaining livelihoods, human well-being, and socioeconomic development, for ensuring protection against waterborne pollution and water-related disasters, and for preserving ecosystems in a climate of peace and political stability. Basically, this definition, although it is a mouthful, tries to really convey this entire graphic, this infographic for you. And the reason I love this definition is because it does do a great job of connecting drinking water infrastructure and human well-being with the ecosystems around us, the hazards posed by climate change, as well as the real life dividends and dangers to economic activities and development. One of the themes that really emerged, one of the side projects that emerged from this project, interestingly enough, was for us a project on water innovation and the whether there is enough support going on in Southeast Michigan for water innovation. And that was not something that we really expected to be looking at when we started working on this project, for instance. So I think that's one example of a point I'm going to be making later on, but how sometimes public scholarship does open up interesting new rabbit holes that you really hadn't expected to see there in advance. But another reason why I like that definition of the water insecurity and this really great image is because it allows us to really connect theory and practice on so many different levels, and merging different theories and disciplines together. Water security as a concept really brings together notions of grassroots organizing along with institutional failure. It brings together issues of social justice, affordability of water, flooding issues, contamination issues, and it connects things like affordability with environmental health risks. One of our current white papers, for instance, is really looking at how water for affordability in Detroit emerged as potentially a major community risk in the run up to COVID, and how institutions around the state and the city have been addressing this issue of water affordability, even as they're responding to the COVID crisis. So, oops. So, recognizing that this is such a complex, interconnected concept really means that we have to go beyond theories and perspectives that we might be more familiar with only in one particular corner of the field. And it basically makes us, one way of makes us be more rigorous is that it forces us to really read and engage in depth with research emanating from different fields, from different disciplines. And so this project has, on the one hand, resulted in so many different manuscripts and spin-offs. And each of these different manuscripts and spin-offs really evidence uh, a really great merging of different theoretical perspectives as well. So just to give you a quick example, we've been looking at theories and frameworks of social ecological resilience, nature culture, privilege, both in terms of racial and environmental privilege, power and resistance, and how government organizations are implicated in these processes of power and resistance, how risk perceptions are socially constructed by various communities on the ground, as well as how research can be engaged with a very culture-centered approach to thinking about health and lived experience. And of course, notions of expertise. Who gets to talk? Who is recognized as talk worthy? These are all various perspectives of theory and research that we've been using for our work. Which again, for me, highlights in some ways the limitations of the traditional research model, because in so many ways the traditional research model is too narrow to actually do justice to, no pun intended, to do justice to a project and a concept that is so complex and has so many moving targets and has so many vested interests at stake. It becomes important to build those community and those institutional ties to be able to really address these themes meaningfully and to build that broader infrastructure. And in some cases, that infrastructure can mean simply just creating space to meet with people, to talk with people, and to engage their views. In other cases, building infrastructure basically means building platforms and thinking about the forums as well as the channels that can be harnessed to bring in different voices to these platforms. As someone who got his multiple degrees in communication, this idea of platform and channels and sources and voices, of course, speaks very strongly to my own expertise. So I feel fortunate to be a communication scholar to examining this process, to be honest. So just to give an example of what we've learned from our community partners, this space should be no stranger to any of you. If you live in the Detroit-Windsor metro area, larger metro area, you should know Monica Lewis Patrick, who is a force of nature and an amazing community guide, partner, leader, sheriff. She is the founder and CEO of We the People of Detroit that has been working tirelessly on a number of issues, not just water, but also around education, around racial justice. I think in one of our earliest meetings, she mentioned the need for us all, activists as well as academics, to deputize ourselves. And I found that word really interesting, and I asked her what she meant by that. And in large ways, our approach to research has been guided by that, as well as subsequent conversations with her and other partners at We the People of Detroit and other groups like the People's Water Board, about what deputization means and how it can shape research. We're all familiar, I think, especially those of us who work on urban planning systems and social planning systems, with the notion of wicked problems. And Rittel and Weber really pointed out, even way back in the 60s and the 70s, that wicked problems require concerted effort because it's not possible to simply have a single approach or a top-down approach. It requires a multidisciplinary, multi-pronged approach to address some of these issues. And that is where public scholarship, I think, is uniquely positioned to make an important transformative difference. What Rittel and Weber necessarily did not really point out so much was how wicked problems also require close attention to social and environmental justice. And of course, thankfully, that's an area that subsequent researchers, as well as planners on wicked problems have tried to address. And in that frame of mind, that's really where I take from draw inspiration from Monica's work at deputization. So deputization basically would be, for us as scholars, it would be a way to lend our research and our teaching expertise, as well as our institutional legitimacy, which is part of our research and teaching expertise. Let's not fool ourselves about that, to the broader cause of social and environmental justice. It basically means recognizing that in some respects, the cause is greater than either any of us, either the activist or the scholar, either activism or scholarship. And we really need a combination of institutional action, activism, and scholarship, and collective action on the ground in order to really address these wicked problems of water security. So it is very much a grassroots-centered and approach, which blends research, service, learning, and teaching, as well as community engagement. Now, as a communication scholar, of course, I try to often think about how some of these broader principles I can understand through communicative lens, at the same time about how I think my discipline can make a contribution to this broader conversation. And so one of the ways that I think that we can be really helpful as communication scholars in these partnerships is to emphasize and try to stick to key principles that can sort of enhance this deputization approach. As a result of those conversations with Monica and Sylvia and so many other amazing people, these are the three principles that we've highlighted: listening, collaboration, and amplification. So let me show you a quick few examples about what we mean by listen, collaborate, and amplify on the ground. So listening, let's go with that first. So when we started this project, I think I mentioned earlier, it came from an ethnographic research initiative. And ethnography, of course, emphasizes being in a community and listening to people, but there are different variations and strains of ethnographic research. Some tend to be more critical than others. And over time, we realized that not only did we have to definitely merge more, flow more towards those critical perspectives of ethnography. In some respects, we even had to suspend our ethnographic research identity for the time being. What was asked of us was simply to be present at first. And that did not mean denying who we were as researchers and ethnographers. It basically meant that when we enter it into a space, we had to sort of put our researcher identity in the background for a while, and emphasize that we were there as people who were genuinely interested and wanted to help and learn. Even something as simple as that, someone who wanted to help and learn, basically meant that you had to learn first in order to help. We've had so many problems, in our society where people have rushed into help without necessarily listening first. And so we realized from the start that, listening is really, really key. It comes as this very first step: be present and listen. Um, the goal to do ethnography, also changed over time a little bit, because it naturally actually started centering the histories that we were hearing first, rather than necessarily being a part and immersing ourselves in key meetings, for instance. When we first started this project, I won't lie, we got a lot of doors shut in our faces, and I think rightly so, because who are we to think that, just because we wanted to do this project and help, doors would magically open for us. We had to be there first and listen to prove to others that we were genuine and that we had intentions that were authentic. And so part of this process, I think, naturally meant that because we were listening, I think we were more attuned to the oral histories and the stories that were emerging. And so these were the stories that we started to center at first. The ethnography and the community participation and all of that definitely happened. It's still happening. It's slow a little bit right now with the COVID crisis and, of course, Zoom University, but it is happening. But I do want to highlight it is the listening and the oral stories that really came first, and for us in so many ways is the centerpiece of this entire project. It also encouraged us to reach out multiple perspectives. When we first began with this project, our goal was, again, relatively narrow. We had this narrow idea that we really wanted to just talk with residents who were impacted directly by the water shutoffs in particular, but also potentially fears of contamination. The lead and copper contamination in public schools was actually big a year or so ago. And we thought naively that this is kind of what we wanted to study, and people will automatically talk with us. And of course, we realized we were being arrogant in so many ways. As we started listening and talking with people, we realized that there is a whole network. Again, thinking through my communicative brain, there is a network of with important relationships and ties, where messages are shared and created, and collective action really is formed on the ground in so many levels. And this network includes not just residents who are directly impacted, and who may actually not be willing to share their stories so directly and so quickly, given the multiple social and institutional risks they face with that transparency. It also meant that we had to talk with legal advocates, community organizers, engineers, healthcare workers, media persons, creative workers, as well as government officials. And these perspectives were all important in sort of helping build that broader story, which was decidedly a complicated, messy story, but the story nevertheless about how a city was engaging and trying to be resilient amidst this crisis. It also helped us hone in on specific areas affected as well, to understand those connections between micro and macro connections between gentrification and water affordability, for instance, and poverty. So we joined conversations in multiple activist, academic, creative, and professional spaces to better recognize really what was happening, and recognize as also the privileges that we shared as well, and how we could use our privilege and our positionality as well in the cause of deputization. So collaboration comes next, and over here for instance, it basically meant recasting participants and informants as not just participants as informants, but really as collaborators. There's so much at stake to work with us, and that basically meant handling criticism that we got often and that we still get. I'm thankful to say, from our community partners with grace and humility. I like to say that constructive criticism is what makes research great. We get criticism from peer reviews all the time when we publish in academic scholars journals, for instance, and the criticism that from our community partners, I think, is just another form of peer review. And in some respects, it's a form of peer review that goes even a longer way in so many ways. Co-authorship and partnering with community leaders to lead teaching workshops and classes and service learning projects is another avenue of collaboration that we engaged in for this project. We also participate in several local forums to translate and disseminate our research with partners. In some cases, when we were asked to do a workshop, for instance, on our own, we recognized that it was far more important to highlight the work and voices of the people on the ground. So again, it goes to my point earlier about recognizing privileges about expertise and who gets to speak and who doesn't in some forums and cases. And let me not say, I don't want to give you the impression that our community partners are shy. They are not, and thankfully they're not. But every way that we can help amplify their voices goes a long way in emphasizing our partnership. And just some examples of teaching collaborations we've done with some of our partners. I've teamed up with the Healing Our Waters Coalition to design promotional material and op-eds for them, infographics to highlight the myths and facts behind water affordability with the People's Water Board Coalition, and of course workshops on social justice and recognizing environmental privilege for Detroit Youth for Justice, not to mention this amazing workshop which the Michigan Science Center invited us to facilitate for the STEMinista program with We the Youth of Detroit and We the People of Detroit. The last part of our communicative puzzle is about amplification. And amplification, I think, is something that doesn't necessarily come easily to a lot of scholars. I joke with my students sometimes that maybe it helps that I worked in PR before, in public relations before going into academia, because I think that helped a lot in knowing and learning how to amplify the voices of our community partners and research participants, as well as the voices of the research team, without making it devolve into an ego issue and making it all about us, because that is a tension that we always have to be constantly aware of, that we don't suck up all the oxygen in the room, because in so many ways the people who are doing so much more of the work that really matters on the ground are our partners, and so amplifying their voices and their concerns is of the utmost priority for us. Some digital platforms that we've used for this amplification process include the project website, DetroitWaterStories.com, my Twitter page, and we've been using hashtags, some of them that we've been coming up on our own, the hashtag Detroit Water Stories hashtag, but also amplifying hashtags from our partners, like hashtag Keep Water On, hashtag Turn Water On. All of these are really important ways that we, again, amplify and build up the voices of our community partners who might not have many Twitter followers or social media followers, for instance, in the policymaking or the academic circles. They might have wonderful followers in the community space, for instance, on Twitter or Facebook. But part of our role in amplification is to connect them with institutional actors as well. So we've been using these platforms to host and share updates on the project, news and events, but also the oral histories that really forms the core data of our work in the theme, in the spirit of open access and open communication. This is not complete yet by any means. I think we only have about 13 or 14 oral histories up right now on the website, and we've collected many more. I think we have about 36 that we're still trying to find time to work on and clean up the interviews and the footage before putting up online. But we also are sharing video footage at various events that we've been a part of course, with permission from our partners, and weblog posts to really demystify the research process a little bit better for anyone who's not an academic or who's an academic from a different discipline. We've been also targeting mainstream news media with op-ed pieces, helping connect reporters to grassroots actors. I mean, one thing that really struck me, for instance, during the COVID crisis was how many reporters were talking to us and wanted to learn directly about, to be connected with people who have been impacted by COVID or water affordability on the ground right now. And they really did not want to talk with either organizers, grassroots organizers, or even in some cases academics who've been working with these folks on the ground and who kept on telling them that, no, you know what, there's a lot of danger. There's a lot of stigma around people just coming up and talking with you and being featured in news. People have done this in the past. They've been doing this for 4 to 5 years now. And they get a lot of pushback from a variety of institutions, and they don't want to do it. Can't you talk to me and I will share the story that I have learned from them? And I used to be a journalist at one point of time, and I do understand notions and emphases on objectivity and sourcing stories. But at the same time, it also seemed very strange to me that journalists in particular would be far more likely to take that line of argument from a tenured professor at an R1 university than they were from, say, Reverend Roz, who runs and directs a Brightmoor food pantry in Brightmoor and has been doing this for a long time. And we've had several cathartic and angering phone calls together about why this happens, and I we know why this happens, but we're trying to again amplify some of these voices together. Sorry about that aside. And then we're also producing and sharing documentary shorts, actually at a conference next month which was originally planned for Indianapolis. Now it's a virtual conference at the National Communication Association. We are organizing a documentary panel where we're sharing about how short documentaries and webisodes and videos can actually enhance and build environmental justice in ways that traditional forms of scholarship cannot. So part of our concerns with creating and designing these documentary shorts was ensuring free access, high and fast sharing capacity, again, protecting the privacy of our participants as well. I'll just show you a quick few samples of our collaborations in public scholarship, because I just looked at my watch and it looks like I'm running short on time, and I do want to share some, keep some time for questions with you folks. So we've been, for instance, working with our students and our community partners to design sample information sheets, for instance. We designed these sheets based on information provided from a variety of both community partners as well as institutional actors in the region to share with some of our focus group participants, for instance, many of whom were older folks living on fixed income, and they needed help in terms of how do we reduce our water bills and how do we cut our water, and in some cases when they needed help paying the water bill and they were behind on payments, of course we connected them with our partners, People's Water Board and the People of Detroit and Hydrate. We also collaborated with folks like, so this is actually this whole slide is from a collaboration with the Healing Our Waters Coalition. Those are my awesome undergraduate students. They created these brochures. They also created videos, promotional videos, and a series of op-eds for Healing Our Waters to really emphasize their underlying mission and ethos. This is another example from another undergrad student collaboration with the People's Water Board. They created a series of myth-busting infographics that folks at the People's Water Board right now are in the middle of trying to refine them further. And the reason largely was, as part of of our research, we realized that there was just so much, not just misinformation, but disinformation, organized disinformation about the scope and the extent and the impact of the water shutoff crisis. And so we really wanted to get at some of those myths and facts. So to recap, we've been doing a lot of public scholarship with the Detroit Water Stories Project, and it ranges from the project website to creating video footage to mainstream advocacy as well as social media advocacy to doing workshops and facilitating training events to organizing community assistance and donation drives, but also service learning collaborations as well, and working with student organizations. One of the groups I've been so excited to work with over the last few months during COVID especially. I want to give a shout out to Replenish Detroit. If you don't follow them on Twitter, you should. They're a student organization that's been working to really provide hygiene products and sanitary products and water to the Brightmoor Pantry. And they were working nonstop, especially during the COVID crisis. So to end, what are some ways we can rethink public scholarship? Well, for me personally, this highlighted the fact that public relevance was really key to the transformative impact of public scholarship. We had to go beyond the traditional "so what" question that I ask when writing a scholarly journal, because now I had to really think deeply and meaningfully about my conversations I was going to have with my partners and my participants. Well, why should people care? Why should they want to be a part of this project? How will this affect them here and now? Public relevance, but I realize also has a lot to do with the project's chosen media and outcome formats, not just its topic and research questions. So again, that's where the translation of research becomes really important, and figuring out the medium and the format as well. How do we understand the impact of public scholarship is crucial to think about, especially when you're starting down this process. You need integrated assessment because so much of public scholarship cuts across traditional categories. Flexibility is key as well with this project. I mean, my focus groups didn't always turn out the way I expected them to. My interviews didn't always turn out the way I expected them to. I often had to schedule follow-ups or in the case of cancellations and postponements. All of this happens all the time when you are working with community partners and members directly. But rather than get overly frustrated, and believe me, there were moments, there still are moments, at the end of the day, you just have to be flexible and adaptable because because life is like that. And that's just the nature of living. Rigor is not a casualty of public scholarship. So all of you who are worried about this, I think this is especially true for graduate students and tenure track faculty members. It's not a casualty of public scholarship. Projects can and actually do become far more robust as everyday applications and experiences sort of inform this work that we're doing. And, thankfully, I have the award that I got this morning to help me back me up. Finally, public scholarship is laborious. This is hard work. It's not easy work. And that means we need support. We need institutional support. So if there's anyone listening in or viewing in with the institutional cloud, I hope you also support your graduate students and your faculty members to do this kind of important work, without which you really cannot have transformative environmental work. So I'll end there. Thank you so much for your time, and again, having me. And I look forward to answering your questions. I want to thank all the amazing current and past team members of the Detroit Water Stories project, some of whose pictures are here, but they're all listed over there as well. So I'll stop there, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitra, for the excellent presentation, and also to all the people that have attended. We're going to now move to the graduate student question and answer panel with the speaker. Before we begin that, I just want to remind everyone that our next seminar will be on Friday, October 23rd at 10 a.m., where Dr. Janani Silvaraja, a postdoctoral scholar from Brock University, will be presenting research on urban forestry and human health. We will now pause for a minute if people want to leave the Zoom room before beginning the Q&A session, but with time, I guess we'll just start right now. So the first question that we had for you, Dr. Mitra, would be, how do you see your research shaping water policies in Detroit and the state at large?
By providing basically some of the legitimacy of our research in so many respects. So there are multiple ways, right? So one, of course, is the advocacy through social media and of course directly involving in media-based publications, whether it's talking with journalists or submitting op-eds and things like that. Definitely trying to be a part of the conversation. One of the things that we often forget is that, especially when it comes to environmental justice and environmental policy issues, all too often the conversation is dominated by a certain powerful demographic, and people of color and women are often not a part of that conversation. Often we discount ourselves from that conversation, thinking this is, we don't know enough. But hey, if there are so many other people of a certain demographic who think they know enough, chances are we know plenty as well, based on our expertise and our experiences as well. And that's actually something that took me a lot of self understanding to figure out. And of course, participating in this awesome project called the Op-Ed Project. If you're not familiar with the Op-Ed Project, look them up. They have a website. And they are really focused on encouraging people of color and women to speak up and be a part of the public conversation in the media. But another part of that is, again, through our traditional scholarly means. I mentioned the COVID project more recently. One of the things we were working on over the summer was tracing the impact of tracing really the discourse around COVID response and water affordability in Detroit and the state of Michigan. And we were hoping to actually release a white paper earlier in September, and that's been slowed down a little bit because of Zoom University and the stresses that it's involved in so many levels. But that is something we're still very much pursuing. And even as we are focusing on releasing that white paper on our website and to the public, we also have a scholarly version that we are submitting to a scholarly journal as well. So again, trying to emphasize connections between scholarly work and advocacy work and research translation work.
The next question is, what common misconceptions about water shutoffs did you encounter most often during your work?
Well, the number one was that it doesn't affect a lot of people and it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. And hey, if you didn't pay your bills on time, you deserve to get your water shut off. And oh, hey, the reason you're not paying your bills is because you're buying a fancy pair of shoes or a cell phone, and all of that is false. The largest demographic of people who are impacted by this are senior citizens and single mothers who are low and fixed income residents, who are renters, who are living in neighborhoods that are rapidly gentrifying. And so they are facing really a complex of these forces, right? On the one hand, you've got rising rents and rising energy bills and water bills. So all of these issues sort of, I think, get in the mix. So it's not fancy sneakers that is behind not paying water bills. So really trying to address some of those myths is something. The other thing also, I think the other big one is that if it's just one house, does it really matter? Well, no, it's not just one house. You know, the impact of water insecurity is immense. Dr. Nadia Gaber of We the People of the Detroit Community Research Collective, again, I would be amiss if I did not mention the work that this research collective has been doing. They recently came out with a scholarly paper in a public health journal, which was mapping out the mental health and mental wellness implications of water affordability and water shutoffs as well. So the effects really transcend across multiple areas of public health: mental, physical, and of course, COVID as well.
Thank you.
So the next question that we had was, obviously a lot of your work is focused on water security in the greater Detroit area. Have you or do you have plans to apply what worked in Detroit with other communities that have faced water insecurity?
Yes. So in some respects, we're already trying to apply at least the methodological and the theoretical understandings of what we've learned and what we're still learning in other contexts. I'm excited to be working on an awesome project right now, actually, with Dr. Carol Miller, who I know is somewhere over here, as well as Dr. Yang-Li Zhang at Wayne State University and some other awesome folks up in Williamson, Michigan and Pontiac, where we are looking at how communities understand the risks of water contaminants and how do they understand these risks? You know, I think from a traditional risk communication perspective and even from a public health perspective, we often take the view that, you know, if we tell them, they'll change their views. And that's really, you know, I hope no one gets offended when I say this, but in some respects, it's kind of naive. People don't always have the availability or the privilege to take changes as soon as you tell them about the risks, or, you know, or in some cases, they might be bombarded by so much information about so many different kinds of risks. Oh, I'm sorry, Donna's on the project too. So I'm sorry I missed you. Dr. Cashin is on that project as well. So in some respects, the work that and the insight that we're learning here in the Detroit Water Stories is already informing the work that I'm engaging with right now on the ground, and definitely hoping to apply this knowledge to other contexts as well.
Great. And the last questions that we want to ask you is, what kind of activities can early career researchers engage into improve communications with communities, but also across disciplines in environmental studies and science?
That's a great question. And there are two responses to that I really think highly about. Number one, remember in the listening slide, I said be present and listen. I think that is so crucial. And that basically means, you know, keeping your eyes and ears to the ground as far as events and workshops and meetings are happening within your community, in your neighborhood, in your city. You'd be surprised. You might think that, you know, we're in a COVID situation right now, none of this is happening, you'd be surprised and you'd be wrong because a lot of these meetings and workshops have moved online. Right after this, actually just started 11 a.m. You know, and I won't mind at all if you migrate from here to there right now, is the opening of the Flint Community Development Lab, but with Freshwater Futures and so many other amazing organizations. So events like this, where you show up and you ask questions and you listen, is really important to understand really what's happening. Don't be afraid to reach out to groups on the ground too. If you come across a group or a website or organization's website that you think is really relevant to your work, send them an email and introduce yourselves and just offer to help. And honestly, people are just so willing and excited to work with you and learn from your expertise. Lastly, the second one is, again, keep your eyes and ears open about workshops and events that are being offered in your university. You know, your graduate school, your interdisciplinary programs like the GLIER and of course TRUST, I'm sure organize all sorts of amazing workshops and training situations. Take advantage of those. I think those are fantastic. I wish when I was a graduate student, I had half of these workshops available to me. And I'm so glad that our graduate students at Wayne and University of Windsor have these. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rahul. You have such an amazing presentation, and I should thank you from everybody that participated to the seminar. And I will really appreciate if you joined for the next seminars on Friday, October 23rd at 10 a.m. And the person who will be present for us is Dr. Jenny Sivardage, a postdoctoral scholar from Brook University, who will be presenting research on urban forestry and human health. And for the registrations, you can go on to the website that I can help you. The website is bit.ly/Windsor to Wayne. And thank you so much again, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.